The first question: does the Thai hermit forest tradition still exist? How did it originate? If not, who was the last real hermit to leave the forest? What was happening in Thai Buddhism after Luang Por Thuot and before Chaukunupali and Luang Por Man and Luang Por Sao?
Well, excuse me if I'm joking, but if it's a hermit tradition, maybe you don't know about them. Especially in the old days, before computers, even before books, and printed books. In Thailand, there were lots of forest monks, hermit monks, but we don't know about them. The belief is that's based both on historical sources, but also meditative knowledge from teachers, is that since the time of the Buddha until today, meditation monks have been wandering around Asia, down from India through to Burma to Thailand, consistently. So for the last 2,500 years. But of course we don't know their names. Books were not written about them. Photographs were not taken, so we just don't know the detail. But we can assume, looking at the spread of Buddhism and the strength of the Theravada Buddhist tradition in these different countries, that's not something that comes about easily or quickly. That's clearly come from hundreds and hundreds of years of practice of both study, what we call the pariyatti, and patipatti, the practice, and particularly meditation. So yes, Luang Por Thuot is one of the well-known monks from about 300 years ago. Forgive if I've got the number a little off, but it's around that sort of time. But remember, nowadays we have statues and pictures of Luang Por Thuot, but we actually have no pictures of Luang Por Thuot from the time when he was alive. The modern sort of view of Luang Por Thuot, the pictures, the statues you see, originated from one or two artists, and there was one famous one who I was told about when I first ordained, who was commissioned to make a picture of Luang Por Thuot, but didn't know what he looked like because there were no sources. So the way artists sometimes, they put their thumb up to measure things and look at things, and they're just preparing to paint something, or put pen to paper or paint to paper. An image of Luang Por Thuot appeared in his thumb. And for a period of time, every time he looked at his thumb, he'd get this nimitta, a vision of Luang Por Thuot, and that's where Luang Por Thuot's likeness was recorded on paper by an artist. And then that picture, portrait, spread. It's become the kind of standard look of Luang Por Thuot. Some of it's based on description as well. We have some description of his life and what happened, the legends and the stories around him. But the likeness, the portrait, that's apparently come through the nimitta appearing on the thumb of an artist. And now everyone copies it as that's the way Luang Por Thuot looked, and why not? Who can argue with that? But we have very few sources of the forest tradition. That's the whole point. If you're intent on developing Margapala Nibbana, you're pretty quiet about it. You go off into the forest, or you may live even in a city. There are people who've developed Margapala Nibbana, the path and fruit, all the way to enlightenment in the cities. Not many, but there are. But it's more a lifestyle thing. It's how you live. As I was saying, you tend to, as you're practicing, developing your insight, eradicating your own defilements, giving up your unwholesome states of mind. That takes time, effort, energy, and often you have a low-key approach to your practice. You keep in the background. So maybe you're in a big monastery, or maybe even a city monastery, but you don't engage too much with the world because you've got to develop your practice. So then you may not leave too many trails of writing books, giving talks, portraits, statues. There's not a lot of information about some teachers or some practitioners because they just haven't provided that. So I often quote the monk Lumpur Jalkunno Tamawitiko, who lived in what tapes are in Bangkok, which is a large, busy Bangkok temple. But he did live there up until in the 1950s and 60s when things were a lot quieter than they are today. But it was still a city temple, and we believe he became enlightened there. And Lumpur Cha would quote him quite often as saying, for the future of Buddhism, there'll be less forest in the world, less jungle. Monasteries and temples will be quieter places. They'll be busier places in the sense they may be in urban areas or even in countryside, but quite close to urban areas. We just have to accept the world changes. More people, world population is bigger. But he would lift up Lumpur Jalkunno Dhammawitiko as a good example of how to practice and become enlightened, reach Nibbana in the city. So they call him the Arahant in the city. And he did it in the way you would expect. He was very disciplined. He meditated every day without fail, sitting, walking meditation for many hours. He obviously studied the scriptures as well, and he did little bits of teaching and helping people, but not too much because he preserved his practice and his state of mind. And that was the way he lived right till the end of his life. There's more how he lived was the important thing. His discipline, his commitment to the practice never wavered. And Ajahn Chah praised that and encouraged that to people. He said, it's not so much where you live. Obviously, if you can find ideal or better situations to practice, that's good. But even if you haven't got an ideal situation, it's how you practice is the important thing. Keeping the precepts, being disciplined in your speech, your actions, developing meditation objects, practicing mindfulness, developing samadhi, and then practicing vipassana, reflecting on the three characteristics in your experience and really bringing your mind to separate from the world or abandon the world through the practice. That's the important thing. You can be living in a very quiet place but not practicing or practicing wrongly, or you can be in a very busy place and practicing well. So until more recent times, we don't have much information about the forest tradition because they were quiet, meditating wherever they were. There weren't any books, there weren't any movies, no internet, of course. So we simply don't have a lot of information. We have more about the monks in the time of the Buddha because that was preserved, and some through the commentaries, later Buddhist texts give us some information about different teachers, different monks. But we believe there have always been monks in the Thailand region, right down to Cambodia and in Indonesia, so not very far from Australia. 1,000 years ago, there were Buddhist monks in these areas. So it's for thousands of years that there have been Buddhist monks practicing, meditating, roaming the forests, living in smaller or sometimes larger communities. But it's the modern tradition. We have more names, biographies, stories that we can also verify. So, we know, like you say, Lumpur Sao, Lumpur Man, Jalkunno Pali, and many, many others. We have a lot more information, and even nowadays in English, a lot more is being translated as well, which is good. I was talking today more about, it's just the fact that if you really want to practice, sometimes you have to be willing to step back a bit, certainly in the beginning of your practice, until your mind is strong, your discipline is strong. Step back a bit, focus on your meditation more, get to know your mind, get to know how to let go of the causes of suffering more, before you go out to help the world. You know, that's the traditional or the more common teaching you get to help you prepare for a life of practicing Buddhism, practicing the Dhamma. Anyway, that's just one answer to that question.
Sadhu Lumpur, the continuation. Can Ajahn tell some stories about Lumpur Proma from Ubon and Lumpur Supa from Phuket?
Starting to get into biographies of great monks, which I don't necessarily have at my fingertips. Lumpur Proma, another one of the meditation masters. That's about as much as I can say as far as details of his life, his teachings. I think you're going to have to Google it or go to the books, or maybe I'll read up on it another time. Lumpur Supa, I knew a lot better because I met him when I was just being a monk for a few years. And then I continuously met him over the years until he passed away, which is only a few years ago. So I knew him for about, 35 years maybe. And he died. When he died, he was 118. So, I knew him when he was sort of already in his 80s. And when he was 118, comparing him back to when I first met him, when I first met him, he seemed strong, healthy, active, even though he's already in his 80s. He had a great meditation posture, which was the first thing I noticed about him. He sat with a straight back, sat firmly, cross-legged, and he could talk for hours, chat about the Dhamma, give people teachings and so on. He had a very solid presence. So that was the first thing I noticed about him. I went to see him in his monastery on the hill, Khao Noi in Phuket. Often people go to the top of the hill to see the sunset over the Andaman Sea. But people like me and other monks would stop halfway up, and rather than see the sunset, we go and see the great monk, Lumpur Supa, which is perhaps a sign of where people are at in their life. Do you want sunsets or do you want enlightenment? And he had a lot of his own stories about his life and a lot of insights into the world, but he was never anyone who pushed himself on others. He'd sit there quite quietly, and then he'd respond to whatever you wanted to ask him, if he was able to, if he was healthy, free, then he might talk at length about different things. So when I was a new monk, I was a bit mischievous, and I'd ask all the wrong questions and all these direct and kind of, you might say, embarrassing questions. So I asked him, my first question was asking him about how you practice the 4 arupa or formless jhanas, because somebody had told me that he had all 8 jhanas and had mastered them. And you don't meet many people like that, so I wanted to ask about that. So I sat down, I was with some other monks, and we asked him about the 8 jhanas, and how you practice them, and he gave us some description about developing the 4 rupa jhanas, the jhanas based on form, and then out of the 4th jhana, developing the 4 arupa jhanas, and talked a little bit about his teacher. His main teacher was a monk called Lumpur Suk, who was from an earlier generation and considered to have some of the best skills with abhinya and jhana and special knowledges that anyone ever had in modern Thai history. So just hearing stories about some of the things that these great teachers, Lumpur Supa himself, Lumpur Suk, and then some of the other teachers of that era, some of the things they could do, the way they could display psychic powers, which might not sound that skillful perhaps, but when it's just a few monks talking amongst themselves, and I guess there was a certain mutual respect. The group of monks I was with, he trusted us, we trusted him. So we could talk at depth about some of the amazing things that monks can get up to with their psychic powers, what they can know, what they can do, what they can see, predictions, ways they can use their samadhi to bless people, cure people, help people out of their suffering, and so on. So that first conversation I remember with him was like that, talking about basically the abilities of the human mind, and hearing it firsthand from someone who had those abilities was quite inspiring and helpful as a monk, because so many people doubt and are skeptical about the mind. If you hear a teacher who has the ability and seems to be able to show it as well, talk with confidence and give instruction, then it helps you to have more confidence in the meditation and the practice you're doing. And occasionally he would show it. Sometimes I've seen him sort of read someone's mind and sort of start talking about their problem when they hadn't actually said anything themselves, but then they realize, oh, he's talking about whatever my problem is or whatever. Talking about karma, past lives, talking about things like ghosts. He'd have lots of ghost stories and stories about when people die, where they're reborn, that kind of thing, which Thai people love. As I said, he didn't really offer these things unless you talked to him and kind of got it out of him. So it wasn't like he was going around boasting or trying to impress people. I'm just telling you some of the things I heard. But I remember later on he talked about the Boxing Day tsunami and how he'd spent a lot of time after that, because he lived in Phuket at that time, and a lot of people died in Phuket in the ocean or next to the ocean. How he spent a lot of time trying to help the vinyanas, the ghosts of people who had died, get to a better place to be reborn, because they had all died suddenly, they suddenly drowned, and they're kind of all these people who had died with confusion, and so we're in realms not very happy because they died in an unpleasant, confusing way, and they died, you could say, with suffering. So they were reborn in places of suffering, and he was trying to help a lot of people, obviously people he didn't know them, but because he had this great ability with his mind, he was helping them to get rebirth. And he had a few stories about ghosts and people who had been contacted by ghosts and then come to him, and then he tried to help them to get this ghost to be born. Things like that. It's just stories about that, which maybe gives you more confidence in the idea of rebirth, karma, rebirth. Again, you could say, well, it's just stories, but if you get to know someone, if you know someone for many years, then you start to trust what they say perhaps over time. Of course, he would also give very ordinary teachings about the Four Noble Truths, about solving your suffering, keeping precepts, meditating on impermanence. He could talk at length about the practice of body contemplation, the first foundation of mindfulness, the super meditations. He was very skilled in that as well, and he could talk a lot about that. So that was another conversation I had with him on another occasion, talking about body contemplation. He talked a little bit sometimes about meeting and staying with Ajahn Chah. And that was another story about the way Ajahn Chah received him when he was in his earlier years. Luang Por Supha would wander around Thailand, and indeed he wandered around Asia. This is like over 100 years ago now. He said no passports, you just go wandering and receive alms, or sometimes you didn't receive alms, sometimes you just starved, you fasted for a day or two until you got food, but you were willing to put up with that because you were committed to the practice. And when he wandered to where Ajahn Chah's monastery was, Ajahn Chah didn't know him and he hadn't trained him. And in those days, he was very strict. If you're a newcomer monk, he always put you at the end of the line. That was just standard practice. Lumpur Supa, Ajahn Chah knew straight away, oh, this is a good monk, a well-practiced monk. So he let him sit at the front of the line, ahead of him, which surprised some of the monks, the junior monks, which is why they remembered it. And it was a great sign of respect. So Ajahn Chah respected his practice. He told me once he went to the Shaolin monastery in China because he wandered through China before he came back to Thailand. He went to the Shaolin monastery, he said, the original Shaolin monastery, not the one that you get in the news nowadays. He went to the original Shaolin monastery, so again, 100 years ago, to learn how to use his jhana to do various psychic feats, because they did have teachers who could do various psychic things, special things in those days, so he went to study there for a little while. He said he didn't have much time, and the main teacher was away when he visited, so that's why he didn't stay so long. He also had many stories about his great endurance, or having to endure, which probably brought forth a lot of endurance, but conditions, situations that brought forth a lot of endurance and patience, like going without food, encountering difficult people, threatening people, wild animals. You probably heard the story. Maybe I'll end with just talking about the story about his time in a cave when he woke up. He was resting and he woke up with his bottom part of his legs in the mouth of a python. If it's a big python, 5 or 6 meter python, it can swallow a human if it has enough time. So he was resting, and while he was resting, this python came into the cave, and pythons do come into the caves if you're staying in one. And if it's a big python, it can potentially kill you. So it was trying to swallow him, and his feet and legs were already in the throat of the python, and that's what woke him up. He said he felt pain in his legs. So when he woke up, he could see the mouth of this huge snake swallowing him. So as he woke up, he made the determination, the adhitthana. He said, well, I have made a determination to go to Nibbana through my practice. That's my commitment. I'm practicing for Nibbana. You can take my body, the snake wanted to swallow him for food, but he said, you can take my body, but you have to take me to Nibbana. And that's the meditation determination he made as he was meditating in the mouth of the snake. And he said, having made that powerful determination, and he had strong samadhi, from that point on the snake started to back off, stop swallowing him, retreat, and eventually let his feet go, and he moved away. And Ajahn Lumpur Supa didn't have to use any violence or aggression or anything. He just made this mental aspiration that, you can have me, but you've got to take me to Nibbana, because that's the determination I made. He said the snake couldn't cope with that mentally, so the snake backed off, went out of the cave, and actually he saw the snake the next day in the forest nearby, and it was dead. It had died. Perhaps the effort to try and swallow a very large creature, human beings are large, so perhaps too large. Sometimes snakes, their greed gets the better of them and they break their muscles and their jaws or whatever, or damage their respiratory system as they try to swallow big things. Or maybe just the karma of trying to swallow a good monk somehow brought the death of the snake. He said it was nothing to do with him. He didn't wish the snake to die, but it died the next day he found it. He was dead. So he survived. So that's a good story, isn't it? If you're ever scared, just focus your mind on Nibbana. Whatever's happening, you're caught in turbulence on an aircraft, or you're very ill, or you're in some threatening situation, Just focus your mind on Nibbana and say, I'm going to Nibbana, I'm practicing for Nibbana, following the Buddha, and whatever happens, that's what I'm doing. Maybe that will protect you, or certainly it'll bring up a good energy, I think, if you do that.
Sadhu Lumpur, the next question. As a business owner who understands the teaching of the 8 worldly winds, like profit and loss, I still notice that when financial loss or a sales slump in the business arises, I contract. There is tension, fear, sometimes even shame. I know in theory this wind blows through all things, but in practice, how can I welcome loss with the same spaciousness I give to success?
Well, obviously loss and success have different meanings. So loss is loss. It's not a good thing. If you are doing business and it's continually a loss, you might as well quit. But hopefully it's only temporary, and there'll be causes and conditions probably beyond your control, and you just have to be patient and work through it, don't you? So you have to keep a good attitude, be patient with the situation and reflect. So even though if on the outside there's a loss, there's problems, you don't let it affect your mind. You keep your mindfulness, you keep your wholesome state of mind as you face the loss. That would be the aim, I guess. And also to reflect, this is the nature of business, world economy, local economy, business, my local business, the thing I do, is prey to many different things, and it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to give you absolute profit. There'll be ups and downs. That's the nature of trade, business, the economy. So just accept it, When you get really tired of it, you're ready to move out and become a monk. But you have to accept that's the nature of, the business that you're doing. There'll always be more profit, less profit, loss, changing conditions, changing technology, changing information, competition. There's so many factors. There's very few businesses that just stay making a profit, successful indefinitely. Things change. And many businesses go out of business and stop, or have to adjust their products and sales. And as long as you're in the world and you're willing to do that, okay, we'll carry on. Or as I said, if you're ready for it, go towards the Dhamma. I would recommend to do a lot of dana, practice dana, help other people, cultivate metta, cultivate generosity, charity. This will help you to cope with loss and cope with economic change. And, if in the end you have to retire from your business or sell your business or close your business down, well, as long as you're not going to starve, then, maybe it's not the end of the world. You don't need a lot to live in this world. A bit of food, a roof over your head, you don't need too much. The rest is like, our cultural conditioning. You've got to be seen as successful, have money, have influence, and so on. But you don't. So practice some meditation. This will help you. Learn to develop mindfulness. You accept the worldly winds and you can deal with them better then.
Sadhu Lumpur, the next question. Dear Ajahn, I had a dream where a blackbird was pecking at my hand and it woke me up. May I ask if this could signify a bad omen or some form of bad karma? Thank you.
Well, I think you have to ask yourself, it's your dream. Blackbird pecking at your hand, yep, sounds a little bit ominous, doesn't it? Don't know what it is. Is it a relative or a friend, somebody who needs you and is going to bother you to get money or get something from you? Sounds like that. There's somebody who needs something from you. It could be, we use this term karmic debtor. somebody who has helped you before, now this life they're going to come and seek your help, and you're going to have to pay for something or give them something, or, sounds like that kind of thing. But that's just speculation as well. So, I'm just trying to give you a way of thinking about it, but it may not be true, it may be something totally different. So everything is uncertain. Let's see. Keep your wits about you, keep mindful, keep your precepts, don't worry too much, just keep doing what you're doing, try to practice well, and let's see what happens. And we have to accept we all have made some karma in life, and this life or past lives, and sometimes it comes back to us, or sometimes people give us trouble, or there's someone that out of the blue we have to suddenly look after or help, and you don't really want to help them, but they're there and you've got to help them. And sometimes you help people and it kind of, like a bird pecking your hand, it hurts, or it's sort of a bit of a burden on you. It's not the best thing, it's not ideal, but it's better than the blackbird killing you, so you didn't die in the dream. So probably it's not the end of the world, it's just you'll have a few obstacles, won't you? There'll be a few problems coming up, and that's normal. Just keep a healthy, positive attitude, be mindful, keep your precepts, maybe you'll get through it.
Sadhulupo, the continuation. Since I began meditating and listening to the Dhamma, I noticed that I have grown more attached to peace and quiet. I often feel drained after going to crowded places or when I need to interact with many people. May I ask if this is normal? Thank you.
Absolutely normal. Me too, and most people I know who meditate have a similar experience. But as much as we do like peace and quiet, we're attracted to it, we also have to balance that with wisdom. So one reflection is, well, of course, it's impossible to maintain absolute peace and quiet all the time in life, because the world is full of people and activities, and so often it's at the most inconvenient or annoying time, noise or activities and distractions will come up. It happens. So keep a wise attitude, just accept that these things happen. You can't always control every situation, every place you are. Use wisdom to help you at times when peace and quiet disappears. But when you do have peace and quiet, take a moment to be mindful of it, appreciate it. Sometimes the Buddha would say things like, reflect on the difference, say like in a monastery, if it's a well-established monastery, say like the Jetavana where the Buddha lived was a very popular monastery, full of monks, but then have lots of visitors as well, day visitors. And when the day visitors come in large numbers, it's noisy and busy and it's full of activity and talking, you might say distracting. And then at some point in the day, they all go home. Most monasteries are like that. There'll be a busy time and then the quiet time. And the Buddha said, well, reflect. When it's quiet, it's like this. Oh, it's quiet. Oh, everyone's gone. And then there's a period when it's busy, everyone's filling up the monastery, or it's full. It's kind of like the natural flow of the world, and you have to be able to maintain mindfulness and reflect on both. If you're saying to yourself, I only want peace and quiet, everything else is wrong, I don't want it, well, you're going to suffer, aren't you? Sure, seek out peace and quiet, you get the best you can, but don't expect it to always be peaceful and quiet. And like you say, when you're in crowded places, it's draining. There's noise, there's people talk to you, there's things happening, and it draws your attention. So yeah, of course you feel more tired. So, why do monks live in the forest like we do? Well, because of that fact. But it doesn't mean to say if you can never go to a crowded place. You just have to establish your mindfulness before you go to the crowded place. When you go there, you do your business. And like the squirrel, when you finish your business, you go back to your quiet forest. But when you're in the crowded place, how do you preserve your energy? You practice mindfulness, what we call indriya samvara, sense restraint, and then mindfulness of the body. particularly bring your attention to your body, to the breath, to the posture, to where you're going, what you're doing. Keep your mindfulness very close to you because you're in a crowded situation. It's very easy to get distracted and drain your energy that way. So keep your mindfulness close and be mindful, as you're looking, as you're hearing, because of the sense impingement in a crowded place. It's very easy to get fascinated by things, react to things with attraction, aversion all the time. So it is tiring. So keep mindfulness there before, during, after, and then, when you can, you get back to your quiet place and you can enjoy the fruits of seclusion when you can. But you won't be able to achieve that all the time.
Sadhu Lumpo. Next question. During sitting meditations, tears fall from one of my eyes. What is the cause for this, and how should I respond? Thank you.
Well, there's sort of two main causes of tears. I would say one is sadness, or maybe remembering something that's sad, or a sad situation is impinging on you, so emotional sadness. And when you meditate, perhaps there's a release of that. But I say more likely and more common is tears of rapture coming from the mind, turning inwards on itself as you meditate, coming to a meditation object and settling down. And you get both physical and mental results from that. And so piti, rapture, joy, interest is one of them. So if you keep practicing, you probably find these tears stop falling so strongly. They're still there, your eyes are moist, but your mind will actually become more absorbed into its object. So it's probably just a temporary experience. It's a sign that your mind is calming down, turning away from the world, turning towards the Dhamma of mindfulness, joy, contentment, one-pointedness. Even if briefly, it can bring up tears. And sometimes also insight, reflecting on the Dhamma, thinking of the Dhamma and having some understanding of Dhamma can also do it. So I think that's the more likely reason. And there's nothing you need to do other than observe it. And as I said, if you keep practicing, you'll find you move through that so that the tears will come and then they'll fade out again, and you might just be left with moist eyes, but you carry on sitting or even walking meditation. And you just carry on and the tears won't bother you. You have to just keep practicing. I think I've told people a few times, when I was a junior monk or new, I had lots of tears all the time, streaming down my cheeks sometimes, and reached a point where my eyes got stingy all the time. The doctor said it's like you've cried yourself out and you got less moisture. So I suffer now from dry eyes. I didn't used to suffer from that. And it's just I've had a lot of tears and moisture from meditation over the years. But it's never been a problem, and I notice it, as you go deeper into your samadhi, it'll fade. So it's a temporary response or reaction as your mind is calming down. And it can be from just the meditation concentrating on an object, or it can also be from reflection, contemplation of Dhamma as well.
Sadhu Lumpo, the next question. Thank you for your teaching. May I please ask your guidance about a situation that arose yesterday? A group of young men attacked another with knives in my street just a few minutes after I passed them and entered my home. I'm wondering what would have been a wholesome response if I have witnessed the attack. I am a quiet and understated person, But when I witness injustice and suffering, I can become outspoken and try to stop what's happening. That might not be wise. Looking the other way is not acceptable to me either. Your guidance is appreciated.
Well, you live in the city, I guess these things happen. When I was growing up in the city, they happened around me too. You have to take every situation as it comes, I think, and there's sometimes maybe if you know somebody in the group, you can talk, but generally speaking, if there's a group of people, you're one individual, and that group of people are aggressive and have weapons and they're beginning a fight, say, I would imagine there's not a lot you can do. And you may even end up being a victim and getting stabbed or hurt if you try to step in. But it depends on the situation, who you are, who they are, and all these things. It's hard to generalize, but generally that's the case. It doesn't mean to say you can't do anything. Like one, obviously, you could call the police, go home, make sure you're safe, and then you ring the police, tell them what's happening. If there's nothing you can do, also you can meditate. Just wish everybody to be peaceful, to be free from their aggressive behavior, for it to end, for the people involved, no one to get hurt. You can wish that, and you can meditate on that. But you also have to practice equanimity, upekkha, because in the world there are conflicts. There's nothing you can do about, and every day. There's conflicts in the world, as we know from the news, that where people kill each other, whether it's two individuals or two groups, on every level, whether it's just kids in the street, criminals, armies fighting wars. There's so many different situations, and there's nothing much you can do other than practice equanimity, meaning it's not good, you don't wish for these things to happen, but you also realize there's nothing much you can do. So you just have to be calm, equanimous. You might say kind of just wait to see what happens, and maybe conditions will change, maybe there'll be something you can do later. I don't know the situation you were in, but it's happened to me before. There's been fights, and there's nothing I could do to stop those fights, and people have been seriously injured, and then everyone runs away because they're scared of police or whatever, and there's somebody left who's injured. You can go and help the injured person then, because everyone else has run away. Sometimes you do that. But it's also very tricky when people are very angry, full of adrenaline. Even somebody who's injured can be aggressive. So I'd just be a bit cautious about stepping into aggressive situations, because it can backfire or it can be just difficult. So you call the police, maybe call an ambulance. You see what you can do. It's not easy. If you don't have your own skills with personal safety and martial arts and all that, you have to be very careful. You could get hurt as well. So, I don't think I can give you a very good answer here other than try to see if there's anything you can do from a distance maybe, and you can always wish everybody well, but you also have to practice a lot of equanimity in the world, because we see things, we witness disputes, arguments, conflicts, even violent ones. Unfortunately, it happens. Sometimes there's not much we can do.